You are a night radio host in a small town. One night during your nightly broadcast, a fabled killer comes back from the dead, and it's up to you to guide people to safety. This is the premise Killer Frequency presents to you, and the game itself is just as unique as this concept. In Killer Frequency, you play as Forrest Nash, a famous radio DJ who gets booted from a high-profile station in the middle of nowhere. For the majority of the game, the only other character with you is Peggy, his faceless co-host who helps the player through puzzles and the menial tasks of a disc jockey. But despite a majority of the game taking place in a small room with these two characters, Killer Frequency paints a richer, more layered story than most AAA games can manage. As you might guess in a small town, everybody has a connection to somebody and it all comes together to create this really nice sense of place. As you take calls throughout the night, you start to become familiar with your immediate surroundings, as well as the rest of the town of Gallows Creek, which you never actually get to see. So many characters and locations from Killer Frequency are vivid in my mind despite me never actually seeing them. It would have been very easy for Killer Frequency to come off as boring, but the writing and voice acting do a great job of selling the story with the help of unlimited number of paper basketballs. The gameplay strikes this really nice balance between lighthearted and pulse-pounding. Hearing the Whistling Man's namesake whistles get louder and louder as you're talking to callers is legitimately scary.
Oh, I'm not going back out there. Oh, shoot. Oh, he's back.
To find your studio, your mind starts to paint a picture of a horror scene that's 10 times scarier than any in-game cutscene. But on the other hand, the wisecracks and quips from callers keep the mood light. Certain methods you'll use for thwarting the Whistling Man break the nervous tension, while the one-liners your character delivers when one of your callers gets killed off reminds you not to take the story so seriously.
Son of a fuck!
Forrest, he's
out of print.
If you're someone who needs a lot of things happening to stay invested, you probably already know this game isn't for you. You have to be in a mood for something more narrative-driven and slow-paced. The game does as good a job as it can with its story and dialogue to keep the moments in between the pivotal survivor calls as engaging as they can be. While there's a good number of survivor calls, there are also a number of side calls and radio ads that flesh out the story. Some reveal the background of the core characters, others reveal information about the game's setting of Gallows Creek, and others are just for fun.
Hello, Gallows Creek. Time to
pay the
price. Time to pay for lives. Time to
sit there.
It's a smart move to keep the pacing from moving from one encounter to the next with no time to breathe. Rather than being a bunch of esoteric dialogue trees that you have to blindly navigate, most of the puzzles in Killer Frequency involve finding some kind of item in the station and using it to guide the caller to safety. This is one of my biggest fears with this game, is that it would just be endless mind reading, trying to guess what option the game wanted me to pick without any kind of clue. While some caller deaths feel a little cheap, there's very little guesswork involved. I've seen some people call the ending rushed, and while I get what they're talking about, it was really rewarding to see all of these threads start coming together as the identity of the Whistling Man is revealed. The more people you save, the more clues you get as to what connects them and why the Whistling Man might be targeting them. Like a good horror movie, there are a lot of twists at the last minute. While some of them stretch the boundaries of plausibility, I thought it was the perfect resolution to this kind of story. Visually, the game reminds me of jazz punk with its light cel-shaded feel. As you can probably tell, the heavy 80s inspiration is what dominates everything from the art direction to the audio. At this point, the 80s nostalgia wave is starting to feel a little tired, but I can't imagine this game working in any other setting. At 4 to 5 hours, Killer Frequency isn't a commitment. It's a light experience that doesn't overstay its welcome. While there are a few hidden collectibles, there isn't much to do after you finish the game besides shoot for a perfect run to get more of the story. Replayability isn't one of those things I look for personally. There are a lot of layers to Killer Frequency. On one hand, it's an 80s nostalgia trip a la Stranger Things. It's also a loving tribute to horror, particularly 80s slasher movies. It's also a fun radio simulator, competent puzzle adventure, creepy horror game, and an enticing murder mystery all wrapped up in one package. I think this is what makes Killer Frequency so interesting. If it was just one of these genres, it would have dipped into a cliche, but it's this really smart fusion that just wraps together in this really tight experience. If you have even a passing interest in horror and are looking to get spooked without any excessive gore or jump scares, Killer Frequency is essential.